Hello everybody from KATHA MEHEFIL. How have you all been? My name is DOLA DASGUPTA and today I'm not going to tell you a tale from Greek myths. Instead, I'm going to tell you a tale from a land which is very cold. It is made of ice. Nothing grows there on the land. As far as you can see, it's just white ice and rocks. And people live very far away from each other, so much so that sometimes a human being might feel that he's alone in that world. The only thing that is visible are dots, which are often wolves or bears. And the only food that one can eat is that which one has to hunt from the sea. It is so cold over there that sometimes when you talk, the words get frozen as soon as they come out of your mouth. And sometimes you have to thaw the words and break them into pieces and warm them up so that you can hear them. The sky is a beautiful blue during the day, but very dark in the night. Only when there is a clear sky, you can see all the stars in the Milky Way. It gets very lonely over there. And in that land, there was a man who had forgotten how it feels to be with another human being. I'm sure he had parents and maybe some siblings too. But when he tried to remember, he couldn't. It was so long ago. He had been alone for years and years and years. And sometimes it got so lonely for him that he cried and he cried. And the tears from his eyes had made ravines on his cheeks. And when he cried, the teardrops would flow through those ravines like rivulets. He would often take his canoe out in the night to hunt, because you had to hunt to eat. So he had to hunt for either fish or whales or seals or other creatures, and then you had to skin it and then dry them in the sun. And when he went out hunting on his canoe, he would often come across seals. And that hunter, for some reason, could never kill a seal. When he looked into the eyes of the seal, he felt the pangs of loneliness even more, because the eyes of the seals reminded him of the feelings and emotions closest to a human being. In this land, seals were considered the wise ones, creatures which did not become humans. And one such moonlit night, as the hunter was looking for food, suddenly at a distance he saw a rock, a big rock, like an island. And on that, he saw something shining. And he even heard voices of women singing, laughing, giggling. He rode a bit closer and he was stunned. What he saw from a distance, he couldn't believe. There were many women dancing in a circle, and they looked so beautiful. Their skin was shining in the moonlight like salmons in springtime. And they were naked. just like newborn babies on a mother's bosom. And they had long, beautiful silver hair and lovely long limbs, and gently and tenderly they were dancing gracefully. He obviously wanted to get closer, so he pulled his oars into his canoe and he let the waves take him closer, little by little, to that rock. As the water lapped against his canoe, it took him closer to the rock. He tied his canoe to the rock and he quietly went up the island. And he hid himself behind a big rock and he watched at these wonderful creatures, and he wondered, where did these women come from in the middle of nowhere? As he was watching them mesmerized, he noticed there was a heap of something lying on the island close to him. They seemed like skin. And suddenly he got so emboldened, he quickly went to that heap of skin and he took one of them and hid it inside his coat and went and hid behind the rock again. Suddenly, a voice called out from the water. And as soon as these women heard that voice, they quickly went to that heap of skins and slipped into them, and they turned into seals. And one by one they yelped and jumped back into the water. Except for one of them. She looked everywhere for her skin and she couldn't find it. She looked very puzzled and frightened. And at that time, the man jumped out of the rock and stood in front of this woman and looked into her eyes and said, "Woman, marry me, I am very lonely." The woman was frightened and shocked, and she said, "I cannot marry you. I don't belong to your world. I belong to another world, and I cannot marry you." The man pleaded and said, "I am very lonely. I've never been with another human being for so long." The woman said, "But I am not human." But then something changed in her heart as she looked at that sad face. And she said, "If I agree to marry you, will you promise after 7 years to return my skin to me?" The man wanted her so badly, he said yes. And the woman got into the canoe and came back to land with him. And soon they started living like man and wife. Within a year, they had a baby boy, and they named the boy Orook. Orook was a plump, sweet boy, and he was growing up. And while he was growing up, his mother would tell him stories of wonderful creatures that lived beneath in the ocean. Stories of whales and walrus and seals and other creatures. In the night, when she put him to sleep, through the smoke hole in the ute, she would show him shapes of walrus and seals and whales and other creatures that she knew in the clouds. She made little stone carvings of all the creatures that lived under the ocean for Orook to play with. And thus, Orook started growing up.